Can an act of love defy death and rewrite the rules? The story you're about to hear is about a silent promise, an unthinkable sacrifice, and a bond science couldn't explain. When doctors gave up and money couldn't buy more time, an ordinary woman made a choice that changed everything. Proving that to be a mother, you don't need DNA, just immense courage. She was the only child of a multimillionaire. At just 8 years old, she was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer. Doctors said there was nothing more they could do. She had 3 months to live. No treatment worked. Hope was gone. Her father, a powerful, wealthy man, tried everything money could buy, but in the end, it wasn't a doctor or scientist who stepped in. It was the family's nanny. What this woman did in secret, without permission or expecting anything in return, left the father in tears. She risked everything to save a girl who wasn't even her own blood. And when the world found out, everything changed. This is a true story of how love, when it's real, doesn't need DNA, just bravery. Sometimes, the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected hearts. Emma, only 8, received news from doctors that would change her family's life forever. She'd been feeling tired constantly and had frequent fevers. At first, her father thought it might be something simple like the flu, but after tests at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, doctors found Emma had a rare, aggressive cancer. They didn't know how it started, but it was spreading fast. Her father, Daniel, was stunned and confused. He couldn't believe this was happening to his little girl. Doctors started treatment right away. She went through chemotherapy and other therapies, hoping something would work, but her condition kept worsening. Daniel was terrified but tried to stay strong for his daughter. The hospital became their second home. Each day brought new challenges. Emma, though young, was brave. She didn't complain much. She just wanted to feel better. The doctors didn't give up easily. They tried every treatment they could find. When chemo failed, they moved to immunotherapy. When that didn't help, they looked for clinical trials. Daniel used all his wealth to give Emma the best care. As a successful executive, he had the means. But even with all that, nothing worked. Each new treatment brought hope, but that hope faded as the cancer kept spreading. Daniel spent long hours at the hospital, barely going to work. He sat by Emma's bed, holding her hand, reading stories, and watching cartoons with her. He wanted to make every day count. Deep down, he carried heavy guilt. His wife had died giving birth to Emma, and now he feared losing her too. He wondered if he was cursed or if life was punishing him. But he never showed these feelings to his daughter. Emma never knew her mother. She'd only seen a photo on a wooden shelf in the living room, a smiling woman holding her pregnant belly. Daniel told Emma her mother was kind and beautiful. He shared stories of how they met, how much they loved each other, and how excited they were to meet her. Sometimes, Emma stared at the photo and asked about her mom. She said she wished she could hug her just once. Daniel always answered gently, hiding his pain. Emma seemed to understand her mother was gone, but never seemed angry about it. She just accepted it as part of her life. Now, as her body weakened, she asked fewer questions. She was losing weight and needed help to walk. Yet, she still smiled when her father told jokes or when nurses brought small toys. She tried to stay positive. Finally, the doctors gave Daniel the final news. There was nothing more they could do. The cancer had spread to most of Emma's organs. Her body wasn't responding. The medical team met with Daniel privately and explained everything. They said Emma had about 3 months left, maybe less. Daniel couldn't speak at first. He felt numb. How could a child with so much life ahead have so little time? He asked if there was any chance, anything they hadn't tried. The doctors said no. They'd done all they could. That night, Daniel sat in the hospital room with the lights dim, watching Emma sleep. He tried not to cry. He thought of all the memories they'd never share. Her first day of school, graduation, or wedding. It was too much to take in. But the next morning, Emma had one request. She didn't ask why she was sick or how much time she had. Instead, she looked at her father and said, "Can I have a birthday party?" Daniel was surprised. He hadn't expected that. Her birthday was in a few weeks. He asked why she wanted a party. Emma said she'd never had a real one before. She wanted balloons, cake, music, and her school friends. She wanted to wear a pretty dress and dance. Daniel nodded and promised he'd make it happen. It would be the best party ever. Since Daniel's wife passed away, everything in their mansion in Beverly Hills changed. The house, once full of life, became quiet and cold. Every corner felt empty. The laughter that once filled the rooms was gone. Instead, the house was now filled with nurses and caregivers who came and went constantly, tending to Emma's health, giving medicine and checking her condition. But they didn't stay long. It seemed no one truly belonged there, except one person. Maria had been hired when Emma was a baby, right after her mother's death. At first, she was just there to help with cleaning and basic household tasks. Over time, Maria did more. She fed the baby, rocked her to sleep, sang lullabies, and stayed by her side when she cried. She wasn't just working there. She became part of Emma's life, someone who never left. As Emma grew, Maria became her constant support. She was there in the mornings, helping Emma dress and making her breakfast. She made sure Emma brushed her teeth and tied her shoes. When Emma had nightmares, Maria sat with her, held her hand, and calmed her down. She read bedtime stories and made up silly songs to make Emma laugh. Their bond grew stronger every day. Daniel noticed, but never tried to stop it. He was often busy with work, trying to manage everything alone after losing his wife. He didn't have the time or energy to be there all the time. Maria filled that gap. To Emma, she wasn't just a helper in the house. One day, when she was about 5, Emma looked at Maria and, without hesitation, called her Mommy Number 2. It wasn't taught. It came naturally from love and trust. The name stuck. From then on, Emma always called her that. Mommy Number 2, can I have juice? Mommy Number 2, can we play? Maria never corrected her. She smiled every time. It meant everything to her. Maria had no children of her own. Her past was marked by deep pain. When she was younger, she had a little sister who got very sick. Her family was poor and couldn't afford proper treatment. Maria watched her sister fade slowly until she was gone. That memory never left her. It stayed buried in her heart, never forgotten. She'd made a silent promise that if she ever had the chance to care for a sick child again, she'd do everything to make that child feel safe and loved. Emma became that child. Caring for her was more than a job. It was a personal mission, something she was meant to do. Even as nurses came and went, Maria stayed. Some caregivers were good at their jobs, others distant. But Maria was different. She sat with Emma during treatments, wiped her tears when shots hurt, and held her hand during tests. When Emma was scared, she didn't call for the nurses. She called for Maria. At school events, Maria showed up when Daniel couldn't. She helped with homework and taught Emma to write her name. Every drawing Emma made had 2 women. One was a mother she never knew, and the other was Maria. The photo of her real mother stayed on the shelf, but it was Maria who gave bedtime kisses, brushed her hair, and made her favorite foods. Daniel sometimes struggled with this. He missed his wife, and seeing Emma bond so closely with someone else reminded him of what he'd lost. But even he couldn't deny how important Maria was. He'd set clear rules when Maria was hired. She wasn't family. She was an employee. She had her own room in the house and followed a schedule. But those rules faded over time. No boundary could hold back the love growing between Maria and Emma. What started as a job became something unspoken, but powerful. Maria didn't ask for special treatment or demand to be seen as more than a worker, but she acted like a mother because that's what Emma needed. And Daniel, though quiet about it, was grateful for her presence. He saw how Emma smiled more when Maria was around, how she seemed calmer. Maria filled an emotional gap no one else could. Her presence made the mansion feel less like a hospital and more like a home, despite the sadness surrounding them. Everything Maria did came from the promise she'd made years ago. She hadn't saved her sister, but she wouldn't fail Emma. Every medicine given, every meal cooked, every story told was her way of keeping that promise. She knew she couldn't cure the cancer, but she could give Emma joy, love, and peace. Maria believed love made pain easier to bear. She sang softly when Emma couldn't sleep and sat by her side on the hardest days. Emma trusted her completely. In Emma's eyes, Maria was a second mother, not by blood, but by choice and care. That bond became unbreakable. Even as days darkened and doctors gave grim news, Maria didn't leave. She stayed strong because she'd made a promise. Emma had become that promise, alive and breathing. She was why Maria kept going and wouldn't let her go. The day of the party, the house felt different from usual. It wasn't lavish or filled with expensive decorations, but it was warm and joyful. Colorful balloons lined the walls, a long table held snacks, and a big pink cake with smooth frosting sat in the center. Small paper hats were passed out, some already crumpled by the boys. Emma sat in her wheelchair in the middle of the room, wearing a light pink dress that fell gently to her knees. Her head was bald from treatments, but her eyes sparkled with happiness. She smiled every time someone gave her a hug or a small gift. Some classmates came with drawings and stuffed animals. Nurses stayed nearby for safety, but no one talked about hospitals or medicine. For that moment, it was a normal birthday party, just as Emma had dreamed. Maria stayed close to Emma the whole time. She made sure her plate had soft foods Emma could eat easily, reminded her to drink water, and helped her sit more comfortably when she looked tired. Maria laughed with the kids, served cake slices, and wiped frosting off Emma's chin with a napkin. Guests saw her as part of the family, not just someone who worked there. Daniel stood near the door, talking to parents and watching everything. He didn't want to steal Emma's spotlight, but didn't want to miss a second. Soft music played in the background, and the kids played simple games that didn't need much movement. There was a small table with crayons and paper, and Emma drew a bit with a friend. Everyone tried to pretend it was a normal party, but deep down, they knew it wasn't. As the party quieted, and most kids had finished their cake, Maria sat on the floor beside Emma. She held a small piece of cake, feeding Emma tiny spoonfuls. Emma tilted her head slightly and looked straight at Maria. Her face was calm, but her eyes were serious. Then, in a soft, weak voice, she asked a question that stopped the world. "Will I live, Mommy?" She didn't say Maria or my other mommy. She said Mommy, because that's who Maria was to her. The room went silent. It was as if the music vanished. Voices stopped and time froze. Maria didn't answer right away. It felt like the air had been knocked out of her. She looked into Emma's eyes, trying to stay strong, but inside, she wanted to cry. The question hurt more than anything she'd ever felt. She wanted to say yes, to smile and tell Emma everything would be okay. But she couldn't lie. Not to Emma, not after all they'd been through. Her lips trembled, and her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She reached out and held Emma's hand tightly. "You're so strong," she whispered. "I'm right here with you." She didn't say yes or no. She just stayed with her. Emma kept looking, as if trying to understand what wasn't said. Behind them, near the door, Daniel had heard the question too. He couldn't move. He covered his face with both hands and turned away. It was too much to hear his daughter ask if she'd live. It was the moment he dreaded since the diagnosis. That question changed something in all of them. Until then, they'd try to act like everything was normal. They decorated the house, planned a party, smiled for photos, and tried to forget the truth. But in that one quiet sentence, Emma brought all back into focus. She wasn't just a girl celebrating her birthday. She was someone who understood more than anyone thought. She could feel her body weakening. She could hear the whispers. She didn't ask because she didn't know. She asked because she needed to hear it from the person she trusted most, the woman she called Mommy. Maria knew that answer would stay with Emma forever. She couldn't change the outcome, but she could choose to be honest, kind, and present. That moment would never fade. It was now part of who they all were. After that question, the party went on, but something had shifted. The kids played a little quieter. The adults spoke in softer tones. Emma, though still smiling, seemed more thoughtful at times. She held Maria's hand and didn't let go. Daniel finally came closer, kissed the top of her head, and sat beside her for the rest of the night. No one mentioned the question again, but its weight lingered in the room. It had changed everything. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It was about making the most of the time they had left. Maria didn't sleep that night after the party, after Emma's question. Her heart felt heavy, and her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept hearing that little voice asking, "Will I live, Mommy?" No matter how many times she closed her eyes, the question came back. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, Maria felt something growing inside her, a need to act. She couldn't do nothing. She had to try something. Anything, even if it seemed impossible. She got up, made coffee, and opened the old laptop kept in the kitchen drawer. She started searching online. At first, it was broad, new cancer treatments, experimental medicine, clinical trials. She read about cases in other countries, families who traveled for help. Some stories were sad, others gave a sliver of hope, but she was looking for a miracle. As hours passed, Maria narrowed her search. She began reading about organ donations and transplants. She learned that in rare cases, part liver could be taken from a living person and given to someone in need. It sounded dangerous and complex, but she kept reading. The procedure required a perfect match in blood type, tissue enzymes, and other genetic markers. It usually worked best between family members. Maria knew she wasn't Emma's blood relative, but something inside told her not to stop. She found a clinic in Boston that did compatibility tests and offered transplant support. The next morning, without telling Daniel or anyone else in the house, she booked an appointment. She told the nurse it was for someone very special. She wasn't sure they'd test her, but they did. Then, all she could do was wait. Waiting for the results was agonizing. Maria went back to her daily routine, helping Emma, cooking, folding clothes, cleaning rooms. But her mind wasn't focused. Every hour felt like a week. She checked her phone constantly, waiting for an email or call. A few days later, she got a message from the clinic asking her to come back. Her heart raced faster than ever. She took a deep breath, told Daniel she needed a personal day off, and left the house early. At the clinic, they handed her a white envelope with her name. She opened it with trembling hands. The numbers and words didn't make sense at first. Then the doctor came in and explained calmly. Maria was a perfect match. Blood type, enzymes, everything needed was there. She sat quietly for a long time, not saying a word. It didn't feel real, but it was. Tears filled her eyes. She couldn't believe it. The doctor said it was extremely rare, especially for non-blood relatives. But the results were clear. Maria's liver could help Emma, maybe even save her. She thought about what it meant. The surgery was risky. She could face health problems later. But none of that scared her. What scared her was losing Emma without trying. She thanked the doctor and left the clinic, clutching the papers to her chest. She didn't know what to do next. She was just a housekeeper. Would they even let her donate? Would Daniel agree? Would the doctors approve? A small voice in her mind said, "No, rules, systems, procedures." But she also knew something stronger than all that. Love. She didn't care how the world worked. She knew what she felt. Emma wasn't just her employer's daughter anymore. Emma was her daughter. Maria went home and sat alone in her room. She looked at the walls and thought deeply. If she told Daniel, he might say no. He might think she was acting emotionally or crossing a line. But Maria wasn't acting on impulse. She'd cared for Emma for years, seen her first steps, soothed her during fevers, calmed her after nightmares, and sat by her during hospital visits. This wasn't just a job. It was a mother's role. Now she had a chance to give something no one else could. It wasn't about duty anymore. It was about love, about doing what had to be done. Maria made a decision. She'd go to the hospital alone and talk to the transplant team. She'd fight for the chance to give part of her liver to Emma. If they said no, she'd keep trying. She wouldn't stop. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Hospitals had rules. Legal systems had forms. And Daniel had authority as Emma's legal guardian. But Maria was ready to break down every wall. Emma wasn't a patient to her. She wasn't a job. She was her daughter, not by birth, but by bond. Maria knew parents make sacrifices. Some give time, others give money. And some, like her, would give a piece of their own body if it meant their child could live. She folded the test results carefully and hid them in a drawer. For now, She'd keep them secret until the right moment. She took a deep breath and looked at a photo of Emma on her dresser. "I won't let you go," she whispered. Not without a fight. In her heart, she'd already decided. The impossible wasn't a barrier anymore. It was just the next step. Maria walked into Massachusetts General Hospital that morning with a mix of fear and determination. She had the envelope with her test results folded neatly in her bag. Her hands were sweaty, her heart racing, but she knew she had to try. She sat across from two doctors in a small room and told them everything. How she cared for Emma since she was a baby, how she'd done the test in secret, and how the results showed she was a perfect match. She said she was ready to move forward with the transplant. She didn't want money or recognition. She just wanted Emma to have a chance. But the doctors cut her off before she could finish. They said, no. They explained the hospital's policy didn't allow transplant from people without a legal or blood connection to the patient. It didn't matter that she loved Emma. Rules were rules. Maria was stunned. She tried to explain again, thinking maybe they didn't understand. She told them how Emma called her mommy number 2, how she'd raised her, how this wasn't about being a worker, but about being a mother. But the doctors were firm. They said they were sorry, but the legal risk was too high. It could cost them their licenses. Maria left the hospital with shaking hands and tears in her eyes. She hadn't expected an immediate yes, but she also hadn't expected a flat no. When she got home, she told Daniel everything. At first, he didn't speak. He looked at her with disbelief, trying to process what she'd done. Then, suddenly, his face changed. His voice broke as he said, "Don't mention this again, please. You're all Emma has. I've already lost my wife. I can't lose you too." He cared about her and respected all she'd done for Emma, but his reaction also showed fear. He was afraid of losing her, of something going wrong during surgery. He wasn't thinking like a desperate father trying to save his daughter. He was thinking like a man who'd already lost too much and didn't want more pain. Maria tried to explain again, but Daniel wouldn't listen. "This isn't your fight," he said. But he was wrong. It was her fight. She'd promised herself long ago she'd do everything to save a child if she got the chance. Now she had that chance. Emma wasn't just someone she'd helped raise. She was family, blood or not. So Maria made a decision. If the hospital wouldn't help, she'd find someone who would. Somewhere in the world, there had to be a way. That night, Maria went back to the laptop, sat on her bedroom floor with the test results beside her, and started searching again. This time, she didn't look for local options. She focused on clinics and hospitals abroad, searching for a living donor liver transplant, non-family urgent pediatric cases, and other terms that might lead somewhere. After hours, she found a medical center overseas with a reputation for taking on tough, extreme cases. Their website showed stories of hope where others had said no. She filled out a form, attached her test results, and wrote a long message explaining who she was, who Emma was, and what she was willing to do. She expected to wait days, maybe weeks, but the next morning she got a reply. A doctor named Dr. Carter asked to speak with her directly. He'd read everything and wanted to help. Maria set up the video call and spoke with Dr. Carter from her room, using an old phone propped on a stack of books. He was calm, kind, and listened without interrupting. His face showed something different from the other doctors. When she finished, he paused for a long moment before speaking. Then he said something she didn't expect. He'd lost his own daughter years ago to a liver disease. She'd been on a transplant list for months, but died before they found a donor. Since then, he dedicated his life to saving other kids. He told Maria he believed in what she was doing. If she was healthy and ready for the risks, he'd accept her as a donor, no matter her job or lack of legal ties to the girl. He explained everything would be done carefully but discreetly to avoid issues. Maria knew this was her only shot. She agreed immediately. She didn't ask about travel or money. She said she'd figure it out. Dr. Carter promised to help with paperwork and guide her through the process. The surgery would be dangerous. She could get sick or even die, but none of that scared her. What scared her was letting Emma go without trying everything. She didn't tell Daniel yet. She knew he'd try to stop her again. This time, she wasn't asking permission. She was making a choice, a mother's choice. She kept the plan to herself, organizing every step carefully. She'd need time, courage, and luck. But one thing was certain. If she didn't do this, she'd never forgive herself. She looked at a photo of Emma on the wall and whispered, "I'll do this, my girl, no matter what." And she meant it. With Daniel away on an international business trip, Maria knew this was her only window to act. She prepared everything in secret. Documents were signed, travel plans confirmed, and the overseas hospital was ready. She waited until the second day of Daniel's trip to move. That morning, she packed 2 small suitcases, one for her, one for Emma. She told the household staff she was taking Emma to a private health appointment, which didn't raise suspicion since she'd always been involved in Emma's medical care. A trusted nurse who knew the real plan helped arrange transport. The flight was long and tense. Emma was tired but calm. She didn't understand everything, but Maria said they were going to a special place for help. They arrived late at night, and the 4 medical team met them in a quiet, private hospital wing. Maria checked in under false names, following Dr. Carter's instructions to avoid attention or interference. Everything was handled with precision. The doctors examined Maria and Emma again to ensure everything was still in order. The surgery was set for the next day. Maria barely slept that night. She sat by Emma's bed, running her fingers through the girl's hair as she slept. Emma still didn't know the full truth. She only knew Maria had promised to do something to help. Before dawn, Maria wrote a short letter and sealed it in an envelope. She placed it under Emma's pillow. It read, "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." She didn't want to scare the girl, but if something went wrong, Emma needed to know this was her choice, made out of love, not fear. Her mind was calm. She was ready. Early that morning, the hospital team moved quickly. Emma was taken to one operating room, Maria to another just steps away. The hallways were quiet. No reporters, no questions, no family, just doctors and nurses focused on the task. Dr. Carter oversaw the procedure himself. The team had rehearsed everything. The plan was to remove a healthy portion of Maria's liver and transplant it into Emma's body immediately. Timing was critical. Once the liver segment was removed, it had to reach Emma within minutes. Both patients were put under anesthesia. Machines beeped steadily. Outside the rooms, no one would have guessed how serious things were inside. The surgeries began. Blades moved. Hands worked carefully, and hours passed like minutes. Everyone in the operating rooms moved with urgency, but no panic. They knew what was at stake. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Daniel was finishing a meeting when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, thinking it was just another office update. But the number was unfamiliar, and something told him to pick up. The voice on the other end was from the international hospital. The woman spoke calmly, but seriously. "Your daughter is currently in surgery," she said. Daniel stood so fast his chair fell over. He didn't understand. What surgery? What hospital? The nurse gave the full name and location. She mentioned Maria's name, and that's when Daniel realized what was happening. His heart sank. He hung up and booked the first flight available, not even stopping to pack properly. He didn't care how long the flight took or what it cost. All he could think about was Emma and Maria. He'd told her not to do this, and she'd done it anyway. When Daniel landed, the procedure was over. He rushed through the airport, barely clearing customs, before taking a taxi. At the hospital, he pushed through the doors and asked for both names. The nurse at the desk directed him to the ICU. When he entered, the room was dark and quiet. There were 2 beds. One held Emma, sleeping peacefully, her small hand wrapped in a bandage. The other held Maria, still unconscious, pale but alive. Machines hummed softly beside them. Daniel walked between the beds, stunned, taking in the scene. It was the first time he'd seen what real sacrifice looked like, not in words, but in action. Emma's heartbeat was steady. Maria's vitals were stable. 2 hearts that once only shared affection now shared something deeper, blood. Daniel felt tears stream down his face. No words came. He just watched. Daniel sat between them for hours. Nurses came and went. Doctors updated him with cautious optimism. The transplant was successful. Both patients were still recovering, and the next few days would be critical. But for now, things looked good. Daniel read the letter Maria had written. He opened it with trembling hands. "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." The words hit him harder than anything else. He finally understood the depth of what Maria felt. She hadn't done this for gratitude or approval. She'd done it because she was truly Emma's mother, not by law, not by blood, but by love and action. Daniel leaned back in his chair, holding both their hands. For the first time in a long time, he felt something close to peace. He saw what no one else had seen before. In that room, there were no titles or roles, just two hearts connected now forever by the same blood. After 13 long hours in the operating center, the doctors finally emerged. Their faces were serious and tired, but there was something else in their expressions, something calm and quietly hopeful. They'd done all they could. The lead surgeon removed his gloves and nodded slowly to the nurse waiting in the hallway. Daniel, who'd been sitting on a bench outside, stood quickly, searching their faces for a sign, afraid to speak. The doctor approached and said, "The surgery was a success." Daniel froze for a second, trying to process the words. The liver transplant had worked. Emma's body had accepted the new organ. There were no signs of rejection so far. Her breathing was stable, her fever was dropping, and her heart rate was strong. Everyone knew this was just a first step, but it was a step they'd all prayed for. Emma was moved to a recovery unit, surrounded by machines and soft blankets. Nurses checked on her every few minutes. She looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. Across the hall, Maria was in a separate room. Her surgery had also finished, but her condition was more fragile. The doctors had placed her in an induced coma to help her heal slowly. The trauma of the operation was intense, and her body needed complete rest. Daniel visited both rooms, walking back and forth with tired steps. When he entered Maria's room for the first time, he couldn't hold back his emotions. He looked at her pale face, the tubes, the machines, the silence. He fell to his knees by her bed. She'd done something no one else had even considered. She'd given part of her body for a girl she didn't give birth to. To Daniel, this wasn't just loyalty. It was real, complete love. The days that followed were slow and emotional. Nurses moved carefully, checking vitals, adjusting medications. Doctors spoke in calm tones, explaining what might happen next. Every hour mattered. Daniel barely left the hospital, staying in waiting rooms, drinking bad coffee, and reading the same book pages without understanding them. On the third morning, something happened. A soft voice called from the bed. "Daddy." It was Emma. Her eyes were half open, her voice weak but clear. Daniel rushed to her side. Her cheeks had color. She blinked slowly and then smiled. "Can I have cake?" she asked. Daniel laughed and cried at the same time. He couldn't believe it. The doctors came in and checked her. Her body was responding better than expected. Her recovery had truly begun. But then she looked around and asked, "Where's Mommy number 2? That question hit Daniel harder than anything. He sat by her side, holding her hand, but didn't know what to say. He thought about telling the truth, but the words wouldn't come. How could he explain to a child that the person she loved most was still sleeping and might not wake up soon? So he just said, "She's resting, sweetheart. She's very tired." Emma trusted him, but Daniel knew he couldn't hide the truth forever. That afternoon, he went back to Maria's room and sat by her side again. He talked out loud, even though she couldn't hear him, or maybe she could. He told her how Emma smiled, how she asked for cake, how she wanted to see her. He thanked her over and over, held her hand, and stayed there for hours, just listening to the soft rhythm of the machines. That room had become the center of his world. The hospital staff started hearing the story. A woman who gave part of her liver to save a girl she didn't give birth to. A caregiver who became more than family. Nurses talked about it in the hallways. Some cried during shift changes. Doctors, used to dealing with cold numbers and tough outcomes, admitted quietly they'd witnessed something rare. Not just a complex medical case, but a true act of sacrifice and love. Emma kept getting stronger. She ate small meals, sat up slowly, and even laughed once when a nurse made a funny face. But she kept asking for Maria every morning, every afternoon. The same question: is she awake yet? Daniel promised to tell her the moment it happened. He stayed close to both rooms, waiting for the second miracle. Not just the girl saved, but the woman who saved her. It became clear to everyone around that something had shifted. The hospital room, once a place of sadness and fear, now felt like the start of something new. What should have been a tragic end had become the beginning of recovery. Emma's life had changed. Her body had accepted the new liver. She was healing faster than expected. And though Maria was still in a coma, her vitals were strong. The doctors were hopeful. The staff looked at Daniel differently now, not just as a man with money or a job title, but as someone tied to a woman who gave everything and a girl who fought to live. They weren't just patients anymore. They were a story of love, courage, and second chances. And in that quiet hospital, everyone could feel it. A tragedy was slowly turning into a miracle. 5 days after the surgery, it happened. The moment everyone had been waiting for. Maria opened her eyes. It was slow at first. She blinked a few times, confused, trying to focus. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Her body was weak, her head heavy, but she was awake. Her vision cleared slowly, and the first thing she saw made her heart leap. It was Emma, standing by her bed with a paper hat from the hospital's kids' playroom. Her smile was wide and full of joy. "Mommy number 2, I'm alive," Emma said loudly. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but no words came. She just cried. The moment was too big, too full of emotion. After everything, the planning, the fear, the surgery, Maria had done it, and Emma had too. They were both still here. Nurses rushed in when they saw Maria was awake. One quickly checked her vitals, adjusted her for, and gently asked her to stay calm. The doctor came in moments later and gave her a soft smile. He explained the surgery had gone as well as anyone could hope. Her body was responding positively. She'd need time to recover, but the worst was over. Emma had visited every day, sitting by Maria, waiting for this exact moment. She'd made drawings, told stories, and even slept in a chair once. Seeing her awake now made Emma even more excited. "I told everyone you were just resting," she said proudly. Maria couldn't stop crying. Her arms were too weak to hug, but she reached out, and Emma held her hand with both of hers. They stayed like that for a long time, not talking, just holding on tight. Later that day, the doctors brought new test results. This time, it wasn't just about the transplant. They were checking something bigger, how Emma's body was responding. Now that her liver was working, the results made everyone pause. The cancer, once spreading rapidly, was now shrinking. The new liver wasn't just functioning. It was helping the medicines finally work. The treatment was doing what it couldn't before. It was a medical surprise. No one had expected such a fast response. The medical team was cautious, but excited. They said there was now hope, real hope. Emma was still sick, and there was a long road ahead, but for the first time, the road didn't lead straight to the end. Maria listened quietly as they explained it to Daniel. She felt relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted. Her sacrifice was working. That night, Daniel came to Maria's room alone. He held something in his hand. The letter she'd written, folded and slightly crumpled, but read multiple times. He stood by her bed, looked at her for a moment, then sat slowly in the chair beside her. His voice was low. "You saved the only person who gave me a reason to keep going," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." Maria blinked slowly, still tired, but her eyes filled with tears again. She didn't need thanks. She'd never done it for recognition. She hadn't asked for permission or praise. She'd done what her heart told her. Daniel stayed by her side for a while, talking quietly about Emma, her recovery, and what might come next. For the first time, he didn't speak as her boss. He spoke as a father. The news of what happened started to spread. It began in the hospital. Nurses told other nurses. Doctors shared the story in the break room. Then someone at a local clinic mentioned it to a reporter. Soon, newspapers and blogs picked it up. A housekeeper who gave part of her liver to save a girl. Headlines like that started appearing. Journalists called the hospital. Some even waited outside, hoping for a photo or interview. But Maria wanted none of it. She asked the staff to keep her recovery room private. She didn't want lights, microphones, or strangers asking questions. Every time someone mentioned the story, she said the same thing. I don't want to be famous. I just want her alive. To her, it wasn't a miracle for the news. It was a personal choice, a quiet act of love, nothing more. Inside the hospital, the mood had changed. Nurses smiled more. People passing Maria's room often peeked in with awe. But she didn't care about that. Her eyes were always on Emma, watching her play with a toy, eat a small meal, or draw with crayons. Emma was laughing again. Her face had color again. She was recovering. That was all that mattered. Maria, though still tired and sore, felt whole inside. She'd done what she came to do. She'd given Emma a new chance. The fight wasn't over, but the future no longer felt like a dead end. Daniel stood in the doorway one morning, watching them together. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Everything had changed, and they all knew it. As the attention grew, so did the public discussion. Doctors worldwide spoke up. Many praised the act, calling it brave and selfless. Some said it reminded them why they became doctors. But others raised questions, not about Maria, but about the systems that failed before her. Why was she rejected at the first hospital? Why did rules stop someone so clearly willing and compatible from donating? Investigations began. Journalists dug into hospital policies and found Maria's case wasn't unique. Over the years, many living donations have been denied due to overly strict rules about legal or blood ties. Lives could have been saved but weren't. A government health committee opened a formal review. Hospital staff gave statements. One director who'd signed Maria's rejection letter was suspended. Change was starting. Medical institutions were now pressured to rethink their protocols. Some hospitals changed policies immediately, adding emotional ties to the list of acceptable donor criteria. Experts wrote articles, using Maria's case as a real-world example of why compassion should factor into medical decisions. Online forums exploded with praise. People who'd never met Maria called her a hero. She was described as a symbol of moral courage. Posts about her were shared thousands of times. Art was created. Her name became linked to organ donation advocacy in several countries. Major health foundations wanted to honor her. Invitations arrived for award ceremonies, dinners, even TV talk shows. But every time someone reached out, Maria said the same thing. Thank you, but no. She didn't want a stage, a trophy, or applause. She hadn't saved Emma to become someone special. She did it because Emma was already special to her. Meanwhile, Maria went on with her life as she liked it, away from cameras, lights, and questions. She didn't even tell most people about the news coverage. She just focused on Emma. They took short morning walks, enjoying the sun. They played board games in the backyard. Sometimes they painted together or made up silly songs. Emma's strength returned bit by bit. Her appetite grew, her energy rose, and her laugh got louder each week. Maria cherished every small sign of progress. A step further walked, an extra spoonful eaten, a cleaner test result. Daniel changed too. He worked less, stayed home more, and spent more time with them. The mansion, once quiet and cold, felt like a home again. But for Maria, the best part of each day was seeing Emma simply live. No tubes, no beeping machines, no fear. One afternoon, Daniel showed her an email. It was an offer from a well-known international medical foundation. They wanted to fly Maria to a global health summit to speak about her experience. Everything would be paid for. They'd give her a humanitarian award in front of thousands. Daniel said it was a chance to inspire others. Maria smiled gently and shook her head. I'm honored, she said, but I've got my reward. She looked out the window where Emma was playing with a ball. She's alive. That's all I ever wanted. Daniel didn't argue. He understood better than anyone. The story could go on without her. The world could talk, share, and remember. Maria didn't need to be part of it. Her place was here with Emma. Others could write articles and give medals. She just wanted to make lunch and fold clothes. To some, her choice to avoid the spotlight was odd. Why not take the awards? Why not share the story firsthand? But to Maria, none of that mattered. The world could call her brave, selfless, heroic. She didn't care. The only title that mattered was Mommy Number 2. That was the only name that filled her heart. There was something no rule book could explain, no system could measure. She'd given part of herself literally to a girl who called her mommy. Now that girl was alive, healing, laughing. To Maria, that was a miracle. That was enough. She didn't want fame or her name in history books. She wanted Emma safe, happy, and growing, and now she had that. She had the peace of knowing real love, when it's true, doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be lived. And that kind of love never dies. 1 year later, the living room looked completely different from the silent hospital rooms of the past. It was decorated with colorful balloons, streamers, and drawings made by kids. A big birthday cake sat on the center table, covered in pink frosting and topped with the number 9. Emma stood in front of it, surrounded by school friends, cousins, and neighbors. Her cheeks were full of color, her smile wide, and her hair, once gone from treatment, was growing back in soft curls. She wore a yellow dress and a small paper crown. The guests counted down together. 3, 2, 1. Emma took a deep breath and blew out the candles. Everyone cheered. Daniel stood near the door, camera in hand, filming everything. He laughed, his face proud and at peace. This was more than a party. It was a celebration of survival, a reminder that Emma had made it. Maria stood beside Emma, gently holding her hand. She wore a simple blue shirt and jeans. Her eyes shone as she watched Emma laugh and eat cake. Over the past year, Maria had stayed close, helping with doctor visits, medication schedules, and school days. She'd recovered slowly from the surgery, but her focus was never on herself. It was always on Emma. Now, seeing her so full of life again, Maria felt something deep inside, a quiet joy, a sense of wholeness. She helped serve juice to the kids and made sure everyone got a slice of cake. Several guests who knew the full story gave her soft smiles or small hugs. But Maria didn't want to talk about the past. She just wanted the day to be perfect for Emma. The music played, kids danced, and for a moment, no one spoke of hospitals, doctors, or pain, just happiness. At one point during the party, Emma stopped playing and turned to look at Maria. Her voice was soft but serious. Mommy Number 2, I'm really going to live now, right? The question wasn't asked out of fear. It was asked out of hope, a need for confirmation. Emma had been through so much at such a young age. Even now, with her strength returning and her laugh louder, she still remembered the hard parts. The needles, the machines, the long nights. Maria knelt slowly, her knees aching a bit, and pressed her forehead to Emma's. She placed her hands gently on the girl's shoulders and looked into her eyes. Yes, my love, she said calmly with a warm smile. You're gonna live. Emma smiled and hugged her tightly. Around them, the party went on, balloons bouncing, kids laughing. But for them, that quiet moment meant everything. Daniel had caught the exchange on camera. He stopped recording for a moment and lowered the device. Watching them, he felt a lump in his throat. Over the past year, he'd changed too. After nearly losing Emma and witnessing Maria's sacrifice, he'd become a different kind of father. He spent more time at home, was present for the small things, and no longer let work dominate every hour. He'd also grown closer to Maria. Their connection, once employer and employee, was now built on trust, respect, and something that didn't need a name. He knew she'd save his daughter, not just with surgery, but with love. Today, he didn't see two people standing by the cake. He saw a real family, formed not by blood, but by choice. As the party continued, people came and went. Some brought gifts, others stayed for cake and snacks. Laughter echoed through the hallways, and music played from a small speaker on the table. In the living room, something special sat near the bookshelf, a simple wooden frame placed carefully beside a family photo. Inside was a letter Maria had written before the surgery. "If I don't wake up, know that Mommy said yes." Daniel had chosen to display it where it could be seen, not for attention, but as a reminder. Everyone who read those words understood what they meant. That love doesn't need approval, that being a parent has nothing to do with last names or birth certificates, and that sometimes the most powerful decisions are the quiet ones, made in the dark out of pure love. That letter had become part of their home. As the sun began to set, the kids sat in a circle, opening gifts. Emma giggled as she unwrapped a puzzle, a doll, and a drawing kit. Maria sat on a nearby couch, watching closely. Every laugh, every hug, every little joke among the kids felt like a gift. Emma wasn't just alive. She was living fully, loudly, happily. And that was all Maria had ever wanted. She didn't need medals, praise, or newspaper stories. She'd already gotten the only reward that mattered. Her daughter, the heart, was here, growing, smiling, dreaming. The fight had been worth it. The pain, the fear, the risk, all of it. Because in the end, the answer to Emma's question was now a promise. Yes, you're going to live. And nothing could be truer. The room was full of light, and the letter in the frame kept reminding everyone, real love is enough. "5 years later, the apartment in Manhattan was full of life on a Saturday morning. Emma, now 13, sat at the kitchen table with books spread out, studying for a science test. Her long hair was tied in a ponytail, and she wore the uniform of the private school she attended. "Dad, have you seen my presentation on the circulatory system?" she asked without looking up from her books. Daniel smiled, standing slowly. At 52, with Emma in full remission for 5 years, he felt stronger than ever. Doctors always said it was the most remarkable case of their careers. "Good morning, Dr. Emma," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Dad, stop calling me that in front of my friends." She laughed, but Daniel knew she secretly liked it. Her dream of becoming a doctor had only grown stronger over time. Maria came in from the kitchen, now 58, but with the same warm smile as always. "Your presentation's on the living room table," she said. And a letter came from the publisher this morning. Daniel picked up the envelope. His book, A Week That Lasted Forever, had been published 2 years ago and became an unexpected hit. Not for fame. Daniel still refused interviews, but because it touched hearts. The publisher wanted a sequel. "You gonna write another book, Dad?" Emma asked, peeking over his shoulder. "Maybe. What do you think I should write about?" "About how life gets better when you have a real family," she said without hesitation. Daniel tucked the letter away. Maybe he would write it. There was so much to tell about these years. Emma's first swim meets, her great grades, the friends she'd made, how Maria had become like a grandmother to her. "Dad, you have a checkup today?" Emma asked, packing her books into her backpack. "Yup. Routine exam every 6 months. Can I come with you after school?" "Always can." On the drive to school, Emma talked about her science project. She wanted to do a presentation on how love and family support can affect medical recovery. "It's based on our story, Dad," she said. "Dr. Carter said he'll help with the research." Daniel glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. The scared, frail girl had turned into a confident, bright teenager. Her eyes were still big and expressive, but now they shone with curiosity and determination. "I'm proud of you, Emma. I'm proud of you, too, Dad, for fighting, for accepting Maria, for proving families can be built with love." At school, Daniel watched Emma wave to friends and greet teachers. She'd become a class leader, always organizing charity projects. Last month, she convinced the school to adopt a needy family from the Bronx, the kind of neighborhood where their story began. "It's important not to forget where we came from," she told him. During the checkup, Dr. Carter, now practicing in the U.S., confirmed what Daniel already knew. 5 years in full remission, he said. "Officially, Emma's cured." "Cured," Daniel repeated, feeling the weight of the word. "I never thought I'd hear that. Maria was right when she said she'd save her, Carter said. In a way, she really did. That afternoon, Daniel picked Emma up from school. She ran out as always, now with a medal on her chest. I won the city writing contest, she shouted, throwing herself into his arms. What did you write about? Second chances, how sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. On the way home, they stopped at the same park where Daniel had taken Emma years ago. Now she ran freely, no limitations, full of energy. Dad, remember the question I asked 5 years ago? Which one? If I was going to live. Daniel stopped pushing the swing she sat on. Of course I remember. Maria answered it the right way. She didn't lie, but she gave me hope. And now I know the answer was yes. It was always yes, because you and Maria never gave up on me. Emma jumped off the swing and hugged him. Dad, thank you for giving me more than a chance. Thank you for giving me a whole family. Daniel hugged her back, his heart full. Thank you for teaching us that family isn't just blood, it's love, it's choice, it's showing up. That night at dinner, Emma made an announcement. Dad, Maria, I've decided that besides being a doctor, I want to work with adoptions. I want to help other kids find their heart families. Maria, who'd been quiet during the talk, smiled with tears in her eyes. I think that's a wonderful idea. You taught me love doesn't need DNA, Emma said, looking at Maria. Now I want to teach the world that. Daniel smiled. His daughter had found her purpose, helping others find what they'd found in each other. I think it's perfect. Later, after Emma went to bed, Daniel and Maria sat on the balcony. The New York sky was clear, rare for city. Maria, Daniel said, breaking the silence, I never asked, do you regret anything? Maria looked at him, surprised. Regret what? Risking your life, giving up your chance to have your own kids. Maria laughed softly. Daniel, I had a daughter. I have a daughter. Emma's mine as much as she's yours, not because I gave birth to her, but because I chose to give my life for her. But if you'd had your own kids, wouldn't you have loved more? Daniel asked. Maria cut him off. Love isn't measured by how it comes. It's measured by how deeply you live it. Daniel nodded. He'd learned that too. And you? Maria asked, do you regret letting me do the surgery? I regret trying to stop you, Daniel said. You knew what you were doing. You were her mother long before I saw it. They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in thought. You know what amazes me most? Daniel said finally. What? How everything changed, not just Emma, but us, the way we see family, love, sacrifice, everything. The best changes come from the hardest choices, Maria said. Inside, Emma slept peacefully. On her nightstand, next to a photo of the mother she never knew, was another picture, Maria, Daniel, and her at the hospital the day they were discharged. All smiling, hugging the family they were always meant to be. Because when love is real, it doesn't need DNA, just the courage to say yes. Some stories end. Others just keep growing in the hearts of those who live them. This is a story with no end, because true love is eternal, and its impact multiplies with every heart it touches.